Well, the third base market is heating up, but your Detroit Tigers stay quiet in the last full day of winter meetings. We'll talk about that and much, much more all today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Thursday, December 12th, 2024. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off of your first purchase. Welcome in, everybody. Happy Thursday. We had a pretty busy and eventful day around baseball on Wednesday. Now, that did not translate into a very busy day in the world of the Detroit Tigers, but the Rule 5 draft occurred. The Tigers did have some movement on that front. We'll talk all about that. We'll talk about Chris Fetter being nationally recognized as one of the best pitching coaches in baseball. And then what everybody really wants to talk about is the third base market. We have a short list of 6 teams that Arenado wants to go to. We have Alex Bregman. I am recording this literally right before midnight because everybody is saying that Bregman's really close, Bregman's really close, Bregman's really close. So I tried to wait as long as I could, but we're pulling the plug here right before midnight, heading into Thursday morning. So look, like that market is heating up, and the Tigers continue to have their name thrown into that ring on the short list of teams that are actually going for it. So that is something we will obviously talk about. Jake Berger traded, and then a lot of signings on top of that among other positions as well. So let's start off with the Rule 5 draft. The Detroit Tigers will start off with who they took. It's nobody. The Detroit Tigers do not take anyone in the Rule 5 draft for the, I believe, second year in a row. I think 2022 was the last time they did pick somebody. So it has now been a while, which is just, it's nice. And like, I know that sounds weird to be like, oh, it's really nice to not pick someone in the Rule 5 draft. But it really is, because we used to, especially in the Avila era, this organization took someone in the Rule 5 dang near every year. Under Avila, he loved the Rule 5 draft. He prepped for the Rule 5 draft more than the actual draft. And it was just a reoccurring symbol of, like, you are still really bad. Like, the team was still really bad. And it was a reminder every single winter meetings. All these, signings are happening and trades are happening. And the Tigers' biggest move of many winter meetings over the years during that decade of a playoff drought was the acquisition they got in the Rule 5 draft. It was Victor Reyes, right? So it's just nice to have look, there are still a lot of holes in this roster. There's still a lot of ways that this roster needs to improve if they want to legitimately compete next year. Okay, I'm not saying this is a great roster, a super good roster even, right? Like, it took a magical run to get them into the postseason this year, but it's just nice to have competency. It's nice to have, there's enough good and decent replacement level players on this roster where every year we do not have to take someone who is literally only a part of this draft pool because they are not good enough to be on a 40-man roster and have never played Major League Baseball before. Not having to rely on that for a roster spot every season is, I know we can move on. I'm going way too in depth and talking probably way too much about not taking someone, but it's just so refreshing to me. And another thing that's refreshing, a little bit more in a negative light, is having an organization that is deep enough where you lose players. And the Detroit Tigers lost 2 players to the major league side of the Rule 5 draft. They lose Liam Hicks to the Miami Marlins. There was a little bit of a rumor there that Hicks was going to get drafted by the Marlins and then immediately flipped and traded to the Rays. But that, it sounds like, at least for the time being, ended up falling through. So he will go and report to the Miami Marlins. And then Gage Workman to the Chicago Cubs. So both of those guys now have to be on the major league roster for those two teams for however many days the limit is. It's changed in the CBA over the years. I want to say it's 90 or 3 months, 3 months, month and a half, something like that. Anyway, they have to stay on the major league roster for a certain amount of days. And we will see how that works out for them. Now, if they are struggling and they cannot get sent down to AAA from these new organizations they're on this season. So, similar to what happened with Will Vest, however many years ago that was now, 3, 4, 5 years ago, if they struggle and the teams that drafted them decide they don't want them anymore, then they can turn around and just send them back to the Detroit Tigers organization. But in the same breath that I was talking about, how nice it is for the Tigers to skip a selection and not need anybody in the Rule 5 draft to, to fill a roster spot or make an offseason, it's also a really good sign of an organization that you have players that are getting taken. Like, I know that sounds weird and like it sucks to lose players. You want to hold on to all the talent you have, obviously. But like the Dodgers lose like 50 players every Rule 5 draft. That's obviously a gross exaggeration, but like you get my point. They always have the most players taken every single Rule 5 draft because they have so much talent and are such a deep organization that they can't possibly fit all of the major league caliber talent they have on their 40-man roster. So again, the Tigers are so unbelievably far away from the Dodgers. I'm not trying to compare the two organizations, but it's been a while since they've had multiple players, on the chopping block or even be in conversation to be taken, nonetheless actually taken in the Rule 5. So the wishing Gage Workman and Liam Hicks nothing but the best. Hicks is the catcher they got in the Carson Kelly trade. Obviously, the pitcher they got there, much more of the big piece in that deal, so the Tigers aren't losing sleep over that. And then Gage Workman, man, I hope he finds a career. That would just be really cool because it's been a rocky road and a tough road until this season for him. And if he doesn't go on that extreme hot stretch in the second half of this year and for most of this year when he was healthy, he's, we're debating whether or not he's cut from the Tigers. Now we're talking about him being taken in the Rule 5 and guaranteed to play Major League Baseball for the Chicago Cubs this year. It's pretty darn cool. So good for him. In the minor league Rule 5 draft, which is similar, obviously it's not like the 40-man roster, but it's similar concept, pretty much the same concept, just in the minor leagues. We're talking AAA, AA. The Tigers do add Junior Tien, I believe is the pronunciation. If it's not, I obviously apologize. No insult intended there. He is a utility infielder that's played some second base, some shortstop, and some third base, a righty bat, 22 years old, from the Mets organization. The highest level he has played at so far in his career was this past season when he played in high single A, and he hit 230 with a 633 OPS. So not a very big bat. The power numbers are very small, very low slugging. His slugging percentage in his professional career, all levels of the minor leagues combined, is 365. So you're talking about next to no power in the bat. But this is going to shock you. He walks a decent amount and has some pretty good on-base percentage numbers given how low his batting average is. Odds are pretty good. Somebody taken in the minor league Rule 5 draft is not going to amount to too terribly much, but he's young. He fits the profile that the organization is going for, and why not take a flyer on somebody and see what happens? So he will be down in the minor leagues for the Detroit Tigers this season. Let's celebrate Chris Fetter. Okay, we'll do that right after this. Got to talk to y'all today about our friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place all of your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2, Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in. As always, making us your first listen every single day. Shots to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will, of course, be back tomorrow on Friday, as, of course, we will be recapping winter meetings, talking about everything that happened. If the Tigers have another quiet Thursday, we will talk about then looking ahead, what that means for the remainder of the offseason, what the Tigers still need to accomplish here. So, talking about what happened and what was announced on Wednesday, Chris Fetter was given the prestigious award of Coach of the Year, according to Baseball America. Talked a lot about how the Tigers' pitching chaos success was attributed to him. Obviously, Hinch for pulling all those strings, but for getting the guys in the position to be effective. That starts and ends with Chris Fetter. And we talk about Robin Lund and Juan Nieves all the time. And again, AJ's involvement. But, everything on the pitching side goes through Fetter for a reason. He is unbelievable at his job. I wake up every day and I am thankful that he is the pitching coach of the Detroit Tigers. Genuinely. He is so unbelievable at his job. And it's just really cool to see him get nationally recognized for something like that, right? Like, obviously, we talk about him and drool about the job he does all the time here, and the fan base is well aware of his success and how good he is. But, it's one thing to have Tigers fans know. It's another thing for him to get nationally recognized. And that's just so cool. And he so much deserves it for so many reasons. Just a great dude. And so, yeah, congratulations. Tip of the cap to Chris Fetter, who wins Baseball America's Coach of the Year. Awesome stuff. And really cool to see the Tigers continuing to be in the headlines for positive reasons. Very, very cool. Nicely done. Everybody involved with that, and nicely done, Chris Fetter. Let's talk about some of the rumors that were swirling. This will be probably what we talk about the most on the show here today. Third base. The third base market among baseball at the moment it's a hot stove. It is to the touch. It's steamy. And that's going to start and end with Bregman. We'll talk about him in a second. Okay. I promise. Nolan Arenado, a few days ago now, we just haven't had time to really talk about it, listed 6 teams as possible trade destinations. They're kind of just like all the usual suspects, like Yankees, Red Sox, Dodgers. The Angels are on there, I guess, but like Phillies, like it's just like the, big market, cool teams. The Detroit Tigers are not on that list. Now, like, we'll see what happens, right? There's nothing that guarantees, I guess, it's one of those 6 teams, but it's certainly going to help if the Cardinals want to be on, good standing with Arenado and whatnot. So we'll see what happens there. I really don't. There was a little bit of smoke with this earlier in the week and earlier in the offseason kind of as a whole. I really don't expect Arenado to be a Tiger. I don't feel like that is the best use of resources for the Detroit Tigers in order to fill third base. Now, Jake Burger was also a conversation that a lot of people were having. We didn't talk about him too much on this show. I think we did 1 segment, maybe 2 segments. We didn't even do a full show on it, but did bring it up, I don't know, probably 3 weeks ago now when we kind of had a broader third base conversation because he has power. That's legitimate 30 home run power for Jake Burger, but it's not a whole hitting profile. Like, he doesn't have a very good on base percentage. He's not going to, it's just a power profile. And He's not a Gold Glover over at third base either. And so it would be kind of the cheaper alternative. So there were some people that were like, hey, this makes a lot of sense because, the Tigers obviously aren't going to spend money. So Jake Burger, he gets traded from the Marlins to the Texas Rangers. So that is obviously off the board. Another candidate. So you have Arenado, didn't mention the Tigers in his list. Jake Burger. When it comes to the biggest conversation surrounding third base, it's going to be Bregman. And, I've really kept my distance from this and not the rumor. We did a whole episode on the, Alex Bregman potentially being a Tiger a few weeks ago now, but I've really held my distance from the hope that we were actually ever in the running. Like I remember I've said multiple times over the offseason, like, he's not going to be a Tiger. People play up the AJ Hinch thing way too much. We're not going to want to spend that much money on a 30-year-old third baseman. Like this just isn't going to happen. And I'm scared because I'm not saying like I'm starting to believe. Like I still don't think he's going to be a Tiger. I want to make that abundantly clear. I still don't think he will be. But I actually think there is like a total Hail Mary, 99-yard touchdown as time expires and it's like a tip play and the defender accidentally tips the ball into the receiver's arms and there's a penalty that's not called. Like whatever the most ridiculous scenario and unlikely scenario you can fathom in your head, like those are the odds, I think, but I think they do actually exist. And just like every reporter on the planet is saying the Tigers, they're, in on Bregman. They're one of the, 4 or 5 teams left. And now we're getting rumors that final offers are being prepared late on Thursday night. And who knows, what's going to come. And there's some reports out there that he's going to sign pretty quickly here. And that's why I waited till so late on Wednesday night to record. I'm holding my breath on it, and that's not good because he's not going to be a Tiger. Like he won't be. The Yankees missed out on Soto, and they don't have anyone to play third base. I can't fathom that they're not going to want to outbid a lot of teams. The Astros don't want to lose him because I don't think they want to trade Kyle Tucker. We'll talk about that in a second. But every report has the Tigers as a team that is, at minimum kicking the tires on Bregman. And it's just gonna suck. That's where I'm at. It makes all the sense in the world, which is why it's so frustrating to not have faith that it might actually happen. I think that's it more than anything. Like he doesn't strike out ever. He's been a good hitter his entire career. He's a great defensive third baseman. Like he fits the profile. He doesn't walk, I guess, a ton, but he never strikes out. Great at-bats, professional at-bats, clubhouse leader, plug-and-play third baseman, both sides of the plate. Like I said, plus defender. Like this is a 4 to 6 win player like every year. It just really makes sense to me. I don't know. They're saying he wants around 200 mil. I have a hard time believing the Tigers are going to pony up and do that, which is why he won't be a Tiger, like I've reiterated a million times. But the fact that there's even like a 0.001% chance has my brain like, man, because it's we got to go to a break here, but like it's about more than just the player, right? That's what the frustration among the fan base is. It's more than just the fact that he is a perfect fit for what the Tigers are trying to do over at third base, right? It's more than that. And that's not to say that there's not some concerns with his offensive numbers have gone down each of the last 2 years. He doesn't have a ton of, like natural power, even though he is still a 20 plus home run guy. Like that's not to say that he's like this flawless, perfect baseball player, else he'd get $1 billion. But like it's about more than just the profile and what he would do on the field. It's also about the significance of the move, right? Everybody, when they talk about the '06 Tigers, goes, well, it started in '04 when we signed Pudge. And it's just, it would feel similar. Obviously, not a copy and paste. The Tigers were a playoff team last year, but like it would feel somewhat similar to that of just the faith that we as fans would actually know that this ownership group and this front office is willing to spend money for no other reason other than that. I think it would be a big deal. And it would really relieve a lot of the fan base. Even if you don't love the player or the profile or think he's a good fit, like just having in the back of your mind, okay, they actually have the guts to just go for it and put their money where their mouth is. Because right now, I don't think very much of the fan base has that faith. So it's really, we spend way too much time on this. I'm not trying to get people's hopes up. He's not going to be a Tiger, but like it's just, we're all waiting for a big move because it's about more than just the player that makes the big move. It's about the actual act of making a big move and having some faith in your own organization that you own. Crazy concept. All right, let's bounce around the league. There's a lot of kind of news and notes around baseball over the last 2 days. We'll talk about all of those right after this. Whoa, there we go. Couldn't find my transition button there. Got to talk to y'all about our friends over at Game Time. Game Time is the best, and they have a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. There's so many great offers and deals and features on Game Time as well. All in pricing where you can toggle this feature and get your entire total up front instead of any surprise fees at checkout or anything like that. Those have the lowest price guarantee. Well, they will credit you 110% of the difference. And of course, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. To take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in as always. So just want to bounce around the league here and just talk about the biggest moves that we haven't had time to discuss on the show over the last couple of days. Max Fried to the New York Yankees. 8 years, over $210 million. I know it's a lot of money, but they missed out on Soto, and they're going to make the rest of the league feel that. And they're going to go spend big money there, elsewhere. I actually really like it. If you have the resources and the money to do that, to lock up a really top end 1-2 in a rotation for the next 4 to 8 years, I think all teams would want to do. And it's costing them a lot of money. That's Cole's contract when he first put pen to paper was $300 million. And now, and obviously that's not how much he has left. And with the new contract after he opted out and whatever, it's not that rich anymore. But between that and Fried, you're talking about total $500 million in 2 pitchers. And that I think, although that's a lot of money, those are also 2 really good pitchers to have at the top of a rotation here. So good for them. Good for Max Fried, honestly. Seems like a great dude. Has done a lot of good things with Atlanta. I have some family down there, and he's always been a really active part of the community and stuff. So shout out Max Fried. Good for him for getting paid. And we'll see how that Yankees rotation that kind of struggled by the end of the postseason this year does with a new $200 million man at the top of it. We haven't had a chance to talk about Cleveland and just the mayhem that was, what was that, Tuesday, involving the Guardians, man. So they trade Andres Jimenez and just absolute pandemonium. So they trade him and everybody at first goes, what the heck are they doing? Because they don't really get much in return. And then a few hours later, they take the return for him and flip and send him to Pittsburgh and then actually get a decent prospect return for him. Ortiz is good, man. I really like Ortiz. And if anybody can make them good, make him good, obviously outside of the Detroit Tigers and their pitching factory that they're starting to be. But Cleveland's always been really good for pitching development. So I actually really like it. At first, it was a head scratcher, and I was kind of lost in on what they were doing, but that directly affects the Detroit Tigers, right? AL Central opponent. That's a guy that's one of the best defensive second basemen in all of baseball, if not just straight up the best defensive second baseman in baseball. But his offensive numbers have plummeted, and his contract was backloaded when he signed with Cleveland. He's getting paid like over $20 million. That's a tough sell for a guy that's getting older, has multiple years left on that deal, and has an OPS in like the mid or high 600s. That's a tough sell no matter how good defensively you are for that much money. So Toronto, they shore up their infield a little bit more. That's something that I'm sure they're happy about. They don't give up too much for him. I think that you're really only adding to payroll from Toronto's perspective. And yeah, I think hopefully it works out for Pittsburgh. They try to get a bat in here, a decent bat. Dude had a pretty good season, decent for Toronto this year, but we'll see, man. I actually don't mind what Cleveland did at all, especially if they can take that money and now reallocate it to other bats that can actually hit for them this upcoming season. Nasty Nate, we talked about him potentially being a Tiger probably, I don't know, a month ago now. And he stays in Texas, which is really anticlimactic. I love Nate Eovaldi. And so him just, I don't know, like I was really kind of hoping for like a big sweepstakes and him going to a new team and whatnot. But Texas keeps their guy 3 years for a guy at his age with his injury history is a heck of a commitment by the organization. So I give a tip of the cap to the Rangers front office and to Eovaldi. Hopefully he can stay healthy and not make anybody regret that, because he is disgusting when he is on and when he is able to pitch on a consistent basis. So the other big news, and we talked about this, really, we've been talking about it all week, is Roki Sasaki. Evan Petzold says that the Tigers, quote, do have a chance for, I should say, do have, quote, a chance on Sasaki. But like, when it was first announced that the Tigers were going to make a pitch for him, it was like, oh my goodness, like we're going to make a pitch for him. And then everybody was like, oh, we could actually get him and whatnot. And then like today, like the White Sox announced they were making a pitch at him. Like all 30 teams are, as we talked about yesterday, like he's going to get paid $5 million and he's one of the best pitchers on the entire market. Like all 30 teams are going to do this. The fact that the Tigers are making a pitch for him, that's awesome. I have zero faith that he is going to pick the Tigers out of every team in baseball. And I hope I'm wrong. And I hope we can laugh about how wrong I was. And we get one of the best pitching, up and coming pitchers, young pitchers in the entire sport. It is literally what he is. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just being like too pessimistic about all of this. And I've just been hurt too many times to have a ton of faith in it. But like, I don't see it. I still think the West Coast teams, the Dodgers, or like the Mariners seem to be like the new clubhouse favorite that everybody's talking about. They're going to bring Ichiro out and to be a part of the presentation and whatnot. So I don't know. I have a hard time believing it's going to be Detroit. I think that was just kind of a reaction to the Tigers saying they were making a presentation for them. But now that we're learning that, as we talked about 2 days ago, all 30 teams are going to do that anyway, it's like, all right, well, okay, we'll see what happens. Garrett Crochet to the Red Sox. Woo. Like that. Whoa. I always forget that that's a thing. Sorry if you're watching on YouTube. Fireworks just went off behind me. Garrett Crochet out of the AL Central. Hallelujah. Thank you. Kyle Teal was one of my favorite prospects in his draft year out of, where did he go? Georgia Tech? No, Virginia. Georgia Tech was, that was the year before. Kevin Parada was who I was thinking of there. Anyway, going down my catcher rabbit hole here. So Teal is like the big name prospect that was sent in return. I think he's going to be a really good player. So that's something that'll affect the Tigers, obviously, if he ends up being the catcher of the future for the Chicago White Sox. But Garrett Crochet out of the AL Central. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Matt Carpenter wants to play again. Please, I like Matt Carpenter. I'm sure he'll get work somewhere. I hope he does. I hope it's not in Detroit, though. MLB draft lottery was a couple of days ago as well. The Nationals get to add to their already kind of abundantly talented draft pool. James Wood, you have, just on the major league level now, James Wood and CJ Abrams and whatnot, but like Dylan Cruz is there, up and coming, obviously. There's a lot of talent in that Nationals organization, and now they're going to add the number 1 overall pick to that, and the Angels get 2. I'm just happy for Angels fans, to be completely honest with you. I really am. I think they deserve it. I'm rooting for them. And then the last thing is Kyle Tucker. I as we said a couple of days ago, I really think that there's going to be a direct correlation between what happens with Bregman and if Tucker is traded. But I think it kind of makes sense, man. The Astros farm system is really bad. Like it is brutal, which is so weird because for so long it was so good, but there's not much there anymore. And so if they can trade one guy and kind of replenish it a little bit, get major league ready talent that's under control for a long time, kind of fill in the gaps of what leaves if Kyle Tucker does get traded, I think you have to consider it. Also, he's about to be a free agent relatively soon here. I wouldn't be chomping at the bit to do it. He's one of the best players in the sport, but I understand the logic a little bit, and it sounds like the Cubs are in on him. Saya Suzuki is believed to be a part of that. Also, Isaac Paredes, former Tiger, believed to be a part of that offer. Luis Gil, who just won Rookie of the Year for the Yankees, is part of the asking price the Astros want from them. So we'll see what happens. Tucker in New York would be a crazy consolation prize for missing out on Juan Soto. And then the Cubs, if they get Tucker, I'd imagine then they don't trade Cody Bellinger, who's been rumored. A lot of stuff swirling around. I think that's everything. Rest in peace to Rocky Colavito. Tigers, great. Made a couple of all-star games for the Tigers. 91 years old, had a good run. Rest in peace. Had a fantastic baseball career. Was a great, great, great ball player. And I want you to just go look at his 1961 season for the Detroit Tigers. That is one of the most underrated offensive seasons I've ever seen. Legitimately. It's like well over 100 walks, 9-something OPS, ton of home runs, 140 RBIs or something ridiculous. Just an absolute monster. One of my mom's favorite players growing up. So holds a special place in my heart as well. Rest in peace to Rocky Colavito. We will be back tomorrow. All right. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch y'all then, baby. Go Tigers.